going on, you goofy freaking goobers?
Hey, there's no need for name calling.
My name's Josiah, and welcome back to Under the Spotlight. On today's episode,
StarWars Rogue Squadron II Rogue Leader.
It's summertime in the year 2000. The world didn't end after all.
That's a good thing, right?
X-Men just hit theaters.
We come bearing our movie.
Life's pretty good, and it was just about to get better, especially for the team at Factor 5. It's been 4 years since the Nintendo 64 released, and despite its staying power, Nintendo was itching to create something new, and they knew this would not be an easy task.
That sounds like a lot of work.
The Nintendo 64 was groundbreaking and set a standard that would linger around the Nintendo name for years to come. Despite the difficulty of what they wanted to do, they knew one thing. They needed their David to tackle this Goliath. Whoops, wrong David. Soon after development of the then codenamed Dolphin began, Nintendo approached Factor 5, the team behind Rogue Squadron on the Nintendo 64, to develop a launch title for the console. Without hesitation, the team knew the game they wanted to make was Rogue Squadron II. Given the proposed power of the console, and after experiencing prototype hardware firsthand, Factor 5 saw this as the perfect opportunity to bring their true vision of Rogue Squadron to life, but knew it wasn't going to be easy. One of these reasons was because the art team couldn't use any of the models ILM had already designed for use in the movies and other projects. This is because the models used were created using NURBS, a method of model generation that, albeit common, was extremely impractical to convert to polygons, especially at the time. This would send the art team on a speed run to create models for the game from scratch that would emulate the same level of quality as the models used in the cinematic releases.
That sounds hard.
They also knew they wouldn't be happy if they used the same AI model they had used previously on the Nintendo 64. While it did do the job, it didn't give the true illusion that your target is a living object rather than a model on a set number of predetermined routes. To solve this, they had to craft entirely new and unique systems and shaders to achieve both the look and feeling they best felt resembled the experience that they were aiming for. Not only were they facing pressure from an intense workload and executive distractions, they were also bullied and backed into a corner by Microsoft.
Fucking assholes.
They were the ones developing StarWars Starfighter, a game arguably inferior that at the time they hoped to be the flagship Star Wars title for anything and everything space combat. The development team behind Starfighter, with direct support from Microsoft, would directly approach LucasArts and offer an undisclosed incentive to either slow development of the game to a halt or cancel the game altogether, solely so Starfighter would be the only game on the market. Cue Microsoft! Thankfully, they failed, but the prospect of wasted money and Microsoft fighting against the project, executives couldn't help but allow fear to trickle all the way down to the development team. Consisting of a total of 27 people, 2 of which were freelance, it was originally speculated that the game would be developed for up to, but no longer than 2 years. It took them 9 months.
I don't know how I did it.
This set the team on a chaotic mission to bring forth what would be one of the greatest Gamecube games of all time. But was it worth it? Is it a game that's ever worth you playing? And is it worth your time buying? That's what we're here to talk about. Star Wars Rogue Squadron II Rogue Leader, released in November of 2001 exclusively as a launch title for the Nintendo Gamecube. Rogue Squadron II is an action, arcade, flight shooter sim game that is as fun to look at visually as it is to actually experience firsthand and play. One thing I immediately applauded and really enjoyed was how the game is structured around a level-by-level system, which admittedly sounds stupid and probably has you thinking, yeah, no But given the formula of modern gaming where so much is reliant on an open world, the super linear approach was a welcome change to the status quo.
That is an original thought.
What wasn't so nice was the reality check. Progression in this game is entirely skill-based and reliant on your skill set as a gamer. A harsh reminder that modern games, for the majority, handhold a bit more than they used to, but another welcome change up. This doesn't excuse the issues that the game does still falter from. While not decision changing, at least in my opinion, they are enough to possibly prevent someone from enjoying the game to the fullest extent. One of those issues that I noticed almost immediately is how difficult it can become to identify an enemy target on screen. Given the game is primarily a muted palette of black, gray, and kinda gray but also black, spotting an enemy, even those within arm's reach, can become incredibly tricky, which at times causes a lot of frustration and other times a head-spinning goose chase to find where the heck it is on your screen. My second issue is the minimap. Don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just there's no reason to have it. It does assist your understanding of the map you're playing in a significant way, so much so that it often does make a map that would feel otherwise unplayable decently manageable because it does some things very, very well. One of those things is it displays the vertical position of an enemy relative to your current position. Enemies show up as a red dot similar to what you've seen in Call of Duty, and the map will draw a line either above or below the red dot to show you if the player is above or below. The larger the line, the larger the gap. Simple and perfect, but it has a pretty heavy limitation. Visual clarity, something that seems to plague this game fairly frequently. Once there are enough enemies in battle, the map can quickly become cluttered, making it hard to identify who is who and where they are. And while it tries, it also doesn't really do much to aid you in identifying priority targets such as specific fighter ship models or buildings. For that, you have to rely exclusively on your targeting system, which is accessed by hitting Y, which then altogether removes the need for a minimap at all, because it does the exact same things, but better. And my final grievance is how twitchy the game controls are. It makes sense to have some slightly jumpy controls so that you waste no time making quick turns and movements, but in those instances where you're tracing your target and you're just about ready to pull the trigger, you all of a sudden can't because your crosshair is slightly too far left, and then slightly too far right, and then left again, which can make for some super frustrating moments, especially if you accidentally over adjust, which is not hard to do. Now you've completely lost your target, having to track them all over again. Normally this wouldn't be a concern. I'd sooner tell you to get good and go back to playing Manor Lords, but where the game tracks and scores you based on your accuracy, it leaves a lot of room to wonder why they went with such a twitchy scheme with no option to slow down cursor speed through something such as a sniper mode. These aren't pressing issues by any means. If anything, they're unrealistic and nitpicking at best. But with the increasing cost of collecting games as a hobby and Star Wars memorabilia as a whole, something as dumb as "Red Dot look bad," in my opinion, is worth a mention. I don't want to lie and say this is an easy game by any means, because it's not, but it's no challenge akin to that of Dark Souls. It simply wants to test and push you to keep trying and learn from each and every attempt. If anything, this only adds to the experience. This could have easily been a cut and dry action flight simulator with very little to talk about, but every detail, big and small, in this game makes this less just another flight sim and more the flight sim.
It became personal with me.
Despite a handful of quirks that could be a turnoff for some, this is a game that I would definitely recommend to play from start to finish. As for owning a copy of Rogue Leader 2, I couldn't suggest a better time. Within its recorded history on price charting, and when you consider inflation adjustments, this game hasn't seen anything more than a $5 fluctuation since 2013, with a complete in-box copy bottoming out at $15 with an average price of give or take $20. It's nothing but a worthwhile purchase. Considering the amount of content you get, the quality of that content, and the amount of replayability, if you're looking to suckle on some nostalgia,
why'd you say it like that?
Rogue Leader 2 is a game that will not only satisfy that itch, but just might have you wanting to come back for more.
Literally, there's a third